Hello and welcome to HR Talk, People Management's regular discussion about the HR topics making the news. I'm James Brockett and this week we'll be talking about parental leave. The government have announced a consultation on a new system that would give a total of 58 weeks leave for new parents, with 30 of those fully transferable between mothers and fathers. Fathers would have at least 6 weeks of paid leave reserved under the proposals, up from the current 2. I'm joined by Jonathan Swan, Policy and Research Officer at Working Families, to discuss this topic. So, Jonathan, the principle of shared parental leave has already been introduced by the measures that came in with additional paternity leave in April. So, how will these proposals take things further?
These proposals go further because fundamentally men who want to take extra leave won't depend on a partner being in work for them to be able to take it. So it's not transferable, it's a standalone right in that sense for men to take extra time off. It also includes the much vaunted Daddy Month, which is a key aspect of this policy and is quite a big change from what's gone before. I'd say one of the largest changes of this. Up until this point we've seen gradual increments and changes to paternity leave, and if I'd have been a gambling man I would have said that it would be more likely to have paid the existing 2 weeks of paternity leave at similar levels to maternity leave than for the extra Daddy Month to come onto the statute books. So it's quite a big step forward. I mean, you can view it in the sense of an incremental change, and it's not completely out of the blue, and political parties have been talking about this. We published something last year at Working Families where all the main political parties were saying something along these lines, so it's not entirely unexpected. And the business community probably would have had some idea that this was coming through, or something like this was coming through. But nonetheless, it is a fairly big change.
Yeah, employers have expressed some doubts about the proposals. Firstly, the Daddy Month, but secondly, the idea of being able to take leave in blocks rather than in one go. Are these fears justified, and how difficult are they, do you think, for employers to implement?
I can understand employers' concerns, and I think particularly small employers have some concerns about employees coming in and out of the workplace. Those concerns sort of manifest around things like not having a dedicated HR function, particularly to deal with these problems, so they see it as a very onerous red tape burden. However, there are sort of issues around this which relate to the right to request flexible working, in that we expect that the regulation around this will be light touch regulation. So employers will still have a veto, so they will be able to insist that employees take the leave in one continuous block rather than break it up. But saying that, we'd like to see employees as much as possible being given the chance to break up the leave into chunks which suit them. I mean, for example, in Germany you've got the situation where people often combine leave and part-time work, so parental leave and part-time work, and have a phased return back into the workplace. And employees like this because it gives them a better work-life balance, and employers like it as well because it gets them their employee back earlier into the workplace. So flexible working and in tandem with parental leave I think can work for both. But employers will be able to say no if it doesn't work for the business.
Yeah. How do you think the principle of the right to request has worked so far? And when so many more people are eligible for flexible working, how smoothly do you think it's going to work?
The right to request has worked pretty well so far. I mean, if you look at the statistics, it accounts for something like 0.1% of employment tribunal cases since 2003. I think the figure stood at something like 350 cases related to flexible working in the right to request last March. So you can sense that the right to request is working pretty well. It's light touch. Employers don't seem to have that many problems with it. It gives a formal procedure. And one of the things we're actually concerned about in the consultation is that there is talk of replacing the formal procedure with a code of practice, which I think probably complicates things more than it needs to be, because in terms of a code of practice, what are the sanctions if an employer, for example, doesn't follow the code of practice, and where does that leave employees who want to go to an employment tribunal? But broadly, we'd say the right to request has worked pretty well, and the important thing to remember is it is a right to request, it's not an absolute right to flexible working.
Is there a danger that employers will end up having to compare what one employee's right to request against another and get themselves in legal knots there?
I don't think that's a realistic issue. I mean, it's one that sometimes comes up with the idea of flexible working saturation, where you have so many people working flexibly that no more can be accommodated. And I know that's one of the fears that's been expressed about extending the right to request to all employees. But we've seen in organisations that have already rolled out to the right to request to all their employees, so you don't have to be a parent or a carer to enjoy it, that they don't have these problems. So I think that that's a bit of a red herring.
With fathers in particular, many of them don't take their 2 weeks paternity leave currently. So how do you think they will respond to the opportunity of having 6 weeks or more?
It's important, I think, if we look at the evidence. I mean, if you look at Scandinavia, where they've had sort of paternity leave on the statute book for a bit longer, and they've had daddy months and things like that, what you see is generally a pattern of slow uptake. So men aren't rushing immediately and saying, I'm taking my full entitlement, I'm going to be off, for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is they're entitled to in their particular country. But you see a gradual increase as it becomes more acceptable within the organisation as well as socially for men to take extended periods out of the workplace. And I would expect the same pattern to be replicated here, that there won't be a huge rush of men wanting to take their entire entitlement straight away. I think it'll be a slow process. I mean, the other thing to remember is that it's absolutely related to the level of pay that you get when you're on paternity leave. And so men, if you look at the example of Iceland, for instance, men had paternity leave, they could take it, they were taking it slowly. As soon as they started to pay it at more realistic levels, the uptake dramatically increased. And I think if that happened here, you would see the same thing happening. Men are more able to take it when they can more afford it. Another important point about that is that where men feel it's culturally unacceptable to take it at the moment, the paternity leave figures often are slightly obscure because men prefer to take annual leave instead of paternity leave because they think taking paternity leave sends the wrong signals about their commitment and engagement to the organisation. But we'd like to see, and I think we will see that change as men get more entitlements to paternity leave.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. You can read more about the parental leave and flexible working in the June issue of People Management magazine, and you can keep up to date with the latest HR news on our website, peoplemanagement.co.uk. That's all for this week. Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.